Well, welcome everybody to episode 28 of season 2 of the Constant Geekery podcast.
Oh, are we starting?
Yeah.
Oh, you're actually recording. Good.
Yeah.
Okay. I suppose this is the point where I need to start with some kind of awful joke or something like that.
That seems to be the way of things.
Seems to be a bit of a tradition, doesn't it? Okay. What do you call a hen looking at a bowl of lettuce?
No idea.
Chicken Caesar salad.
That's actually quite good. Excellent. Well, hopefully you enjoyed that, folks. Welcome to the podcast. We've got quite a few news stories we want to cover today. And we were going to do Intel Arc, the new graphics.
Graphics. Oh, we were so excited about the potential of that.
Yeah, and by so excited, what we mean is moderately interested.
Yeah, and we were going to do loads of research and unearth all the gems and everything you needed to know about this exciting new technology. Unfortunately, there was not much to unearth, so we're going to mention it, but there you go.
Yeah, so we'll sort of have a dual main topic. The other one that I want to cover is the Ssd Bait and Switch saga.
Yes.
Which I think deserves mention.
To be fair, it's quite a lot of shocking revelations in today's podcast about people's behaviour, really, isn't it?
There is. So. But let's get started. Good news, Pete.
Go on.
Tim Cook doesn't need to worry about his pension anymore.
I bet I'm so pleased for him.
I imagine you're really relieved.
Well, it's been playing on my mind.
Yeah.
You know, I haven't mentioned it for a few weeks on the podcast, paradoxically, because it has been of such a concern to me.
Interesting. Well, you need not be concerned anymore because he's been given a small sum, a little nest egg, that should keep him comfortable.
Good.
It's only $750 million, but I imagine he can stretch that out, and that'll be a good retirement pot.
Not if he lives in San Francisco.
Didn't think of that. Yeah,
but he doesn't. I don't think. Well, I don't know where Tim Cook lives.
Who knows? Sticking with Apple, they've settled a class action lawsuit that was brought by a number of developers. Now, this is not the Fortnite legal case, although a lot of people are saying that the settlement that Apple has made and some of the changes they've made are helping to kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Stand them in good stead for the outcome of that trial.
Yeah. Okay.
So this class action lawsuit actually was filed in 2019, and the basic thrust of the lawsuit was all to do with Apple's 30% cut that it takes from apps on the App Store. They actually listed that 30% cut as, and I quote, an abuse of power. Actually, I say I quote.
Apple.
I'm paraphrasing.
Apple did.
No, the lawyers are saying that Apple's 30% cut is an abuse of power. We'll come. Just hold that thought in mind because we're going to come back to it. So here's what the settlement is. Apple has agreed a $100 million fund for small developers. So these developers will be able to claim funds, compensation, if you like, between $250 and $30,000, depending on how big they are and depending on their App Store history.
Okay. That sounds good.
Yeah. Well, except it's not a $100 million fund because the lawyers are taking 30%.
Hashtag ironic.
It's incredible, isn't it?
Surely that's some kind of abuse of power.
It is an abuse of power, but I'm not abusing this delightful Constant Geekery branded mug.
You stuck that in there quickly.
Yeah, and I would say shop.constantgeekery.com if you want to get your own mug. I know some people have indeed been buying mugs.
Really?
We've got some T-shirts on the way as well. So more news on that at some point.
Okay.
Anyway, yeah, lawyers taking 30%. That's all fine. Apple taking 30% and actually delivering some value for that. That's not fine. But there we go.
No. Well, I don't know what to say about that, really.
No. Well, I think we've said what we needed to say, and everyone will form their own
conclusions.
So they have made some changes to the App Store policies, and this is what sort of gets them prepared for the
Fortnite case.
That's it.
Yeah.
They've expanded the number of price points that developers can charge for subscriptions, in-app purchases, and paid apps.
Okay.
And you might remember that they actually reduced the commission rate for small developers. I think this is developers with less than $1 million turnover, so small to medium-sized development companies. They slashed the commission rate to 15%. And they said that would be at least for 3 years, but now it would appear they're going to make that permanent.
Okay, that's good.
And developers will now be able to contact their customers via email or any other communication channel that they have with their customer to inform them about alternate payment methods which don't carry Apple's fee. So this gets around some of the arguments being made by the likes of Spotify and Fortnite.
So basically what's going to happen is when this Fortnite case actually comes to court, it's going to almost be like, what do we want? All these things. When do we want them? Guys, you've already got them.
Well, there are limits to it, of course. The customer needs to consent to the communications and they have to have the right to opt out, which is entirely in line with data laws around the world. So it's not as simple as doing what Fortnite were doing, which is redirecting people via the app to a different payment service, which is still, as far as I understand it, in contravention of the terms. But they can contact people and say, oh, why don't you go on our website and buy your subscription there?
Well, that seems okay.
Yeah. All of these changes are subject to approval by the US federal court because of the ongoing case. So I don't think this has happened yet, but this is the proposal.
That's actually quite clever, because if the US federal court does approve these things, it's almost like a legal stamp of approval ahead of this Fortnite case, which is almost like, but the court's already approved this. It's almost like an episode of Suits, isn't it?
Almost. I must confess, I've not been following that case, and I'm not up to speed on the latest developments. So we may not have all of the correct information here. And the reason why I haven't been following it is because I fundamentally disagree with the posturing. Fortnite did this deliberately. They'd already prepared that 1984 movie thing, take on Apple's advert. It was obvious that they're doing this for posturing, PR, and marketing.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of that going on, isn't there?
But dressing it up as fighting for the little guy, well, this is, we've spoken about this before on the podcast. Charging 30% or 15%, as the case is for small developers, is perfectly reasonable and a whole heck of a lot less than developers used to get charged.
Yeah, when you actually had physical product that you went and bought in a game store, you know, and you picked a cartridge or a box off the shelf and had a CD-ROM or whatever in it.
That's it. So, anyway, that's been a bit of interesting news. Here's some interesting news regarding ARM. We were talking about ARM last week.
We were.
And there's basically been a bit of a heist.
Yeah, this has not been on my radar at all, but this is frankly shocking, what you're about to describe here.
So, ARM in China, they've had an ongoing dispute with the CEO because he was using his position to get people to invest in his own company.
Yeah,
Alpha Texture, that's his company.
That's right.
So they were trying to get him out of position, and in the end, they did oust the guy. His name is Alan Wu, and the board voted 7-1 in favour of removing him as CEO of ARM China.
Yeah, except
he still possesses the seal of the company, which, as far as Chinese law goes, means he's its legal representative, and he has used that position to basically sack anyone who's loyal to ARM, to hire security to stop ARM employees from entering ARM China. He's he's basically stolen ARM China.
It's almost the stuff of a film, isn't it? You know, it's that ludicrous that, you know, you're sacked, but you still have all the keys to the building. Essentially, everything. This seal is the thing that allows him to do these things, and then the private security. It is the stuff of movies.
It is, and it gets even worse. Of course, ARM has responded by refusing to give him any intellectual property. So it's quite key, actually, that he doesn't have any of the server chips.
Yep.
So the stuff that Amazon and others have been doing in the data center market, he doesn't have any of that.
And Ampere computing stuff.
That's the stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. And the newest core that he's got is the A77. So he doesn't have ARM version 9 either.
Yeah.
But he does obviously have the basis of building on ARM version 7, is it? Version 8, whatever it is. I mean, it's the same version that Apple's built M1 on, so it's a pretty cool foundation.
Good instruction set.
And what he's actually also done is launched an event. So he's done one of these events where they've been announcing that they're going to ship a new, what they call an XPU line of products with AI accelerators, processing units, image signal processors, all of these kind of things, and targeting the Internet of Things market. So this is
not just the Internet of Things. It has to be said, the mobile, the network, the infrastructure, and the 5G markets as well. I don't know why that would be of interest.
No, it's a real mystery, isn't it? The company itself is actually only 49% owned by ARM or SoftBank, who own ARM, and the rest is owned by the Chinese government. So something that I learned fairly early on in my career, because my first business, we got acquired by another company, and what they acquired was 52% of the business. And I was so naive at the time that I didn't realise that would effectively make the 48% that we had left completely worthless. Because when someone controls more than half of the company, they control the company.
Yeah.
And there's not a damn thing you can do about it. So it's possibly a bit foolish to have gone down this road, and perhaps they could have handled things better. But interestingly, Pete, and this is a real shock to me, but the Chinese government doesn't seem keen to do anything about this.
No, they seem happy with it. Yeah, they seem happy with it.
Can't imagine why that would be.
No, I mean, what interest have they got in 5G or image signal processors, for example, that can use AI and things to recognise faces and track people and know where they are and what they're doing? And
I don't think China's interested in any of that stuff.
Well, who would be?
No, absolutely. So yeah, quite a development. Anyway, sticking with China, another little story that I noticed, and I thought it was interesting because I didn't know this existed, but this is a nice catchy name, but the China Supreme People's Court and Ministry of Human Resources and Social Security,
also known as
that one, they are condemning the 996 work culture.
Yeah, so for those that don't know what the 996 work culture is, it's basically the culture of working from 9 in the morning till 9 in the evening, 6 days a week.
Yeah, without overtime pay.
Crazy.
And what I thought was interesting about this story is not so much that the court is apparently condemning this and I don't know what they're going to do about it. It's just the fact that it actually exists. So you've got software developers who are working under these conditions because they don't really have a choice. There's no alternative.
No.
And
they are often promised that if they do this, though, that they'll get stock in the company or some bonuses, because it's often startups that actually go on to do very well that are abusing this a lot. But obviously, surprise, surprise, in most cases, they don't get the things they're promised.
It's shameful, really. And I don't think it works either. I mean, as most people know who watch the podcast, we own together a web studio digital agency.
Wait, do we?
Yeah, we do.
Oh, okay.
And something we instigated right from day one was a 4-day week, or an option of a 4-day week. Not everyone takes it. It's not for everybody. But certainly I speak for myself, I certainly took advantage of the 4-day week.
Certainly did, you lazy old thing.
And what I found is that you can get as much work done in 4 days as you can in 5 because you're more relaxed and you have a better work-life balance. And so that's led us to push further down this road. We introduced flexible working, more holiday. We've just introduced more holiday for our staff. We now have remote working, so people can kind of work when they want, how they want. And what we've noticed is each time we've done one of these changes, its productivity is
increased. And staff team well-being as well, morale.
So this whole 996 business, or the culture that I used to have at some of the agencies I worked at, where you've got to be in before the boss and you can't leave until the boss is gone.
Yeah,
that kind of nonsense. It's just stupid. It really is. When are people going to wake up to the fact that this is not the way we're meant to live? We need to have a balance between our work and our life.
Yeah, it's still there. I mean, I say it's still there. It's 10 years since we started our agency together, but one of the reasons I moved is I was doing crazy hours with the business I worked at before. And on the surface of it, it was like, oh, no, go and see your family, work-life balance, all that kind of stuff. And that was the official front. But I was fairly senior in that company, and you'd then get the comments about, oh, sorry, just not my microphone. You'd then get the comments about a particular individual always finishing at 5:30 and going home, or always being in at the start of the day and then going home, never in early, never staying late. And you sort of kind of think, okay, so the official line is X, but actually the permeating attitude is Y, in that, yeah, you can do those things, but you won't progress in the company unless, you then get praised for staying late and going above and beyond and all that kind of thing. And to a degree, when you go above and beyond, that is appreciated. But not if you burn yourself out and you get to the point where you don't want to be there anymore.
Well, it can't be the norm, can it? I mean, we've always had the stance that if somebody is required to regularly work overtime, then there's a problem.
Yeah.
And that problem is not with that person. That problem is with us as managers of the business, directors of the business, that we have failed to put
enough resource in place.
That's it. So we've always taken that as a failure on our part and taken steps to rectify it. I mean, no business is perfect. I'm not trying to blow some trumpet here, but I just think that,
ours is. We're pretty perfect, actually. Great leadership from the top, at least 50% of the time.
Anyway, the whole idea of a 996, I can't. I'm just trying to do the math in my head. That's 72 hours a week.
It is, yeah.
It's basically 2 full-time weeks each week.
It's equivalent. Someone did say it's the equivalent of modern-day slavery, and there's a lot of this going on. 0-hour contracts is another example. And so, in fact, I saw a funny YouTube short the other day of a supposed Amazon employee sat down in the break room making some comment about, this is how we're treated, blah, 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 blah. And then another actual Amazon employee saying, well, he can't be an Amazon employee because he's got a break room. So, you don't always know what to believe, but we live in a society that's meant to be enlightened, and yet these things carry on.
They do, and we're using the tech that results from this kind of abuse. And I just want to say, I'd if tech cost more money and people weren't being abused, then that would be a preferable situation, even if it meant that we got to upgrade less often and all the rest of it.
It's the same with without wanting to get to anything about this, we expect a certain price point for our clothes, our technology, our food. We've in the country we live in, we have certain expectations that kind of encourage these behaviours, and environmental damage as well. So,
and they do. And let's be honest, we're all guilty of it. I mean, we had a thing through our door the other day saying the local village shop is closing next year, and well, that's sad. And but it's just a fact of things. We all go shopping on Amazon. We all go to the big supermarkets. So we've only got ourselves to blame.
Yeah.
Anyway, moving on, but sticking with China. China is banning under 18s. Tom started to shiver over there, from playing online games for more than an hour a day. How would you get on with that, Tom? An hour a day of gaming? He's shaking his head, looks confused.
What is this online gaming of which you speak?
Tom likes to spend his time playing with friends, and I think that's part of the modern world in which we live. It's different to the world we grew up in, Pete.
It is, but I think every generation has their. I can remember my mum saying that she used to get told off for reading too many books. Her eyes would go square, and then it's like you're watching too much telly, your eyes will go square. And now it's like you're watching too much YouTube or Minecraft, your eyes will go square. It's and particularly with the pandemic as well, that's exacerbated that, hasn't it? Because
Anyway, there's also times where they can play and times where they can't play. So, and that's been made law in the whole country. So that's quite interesting. Anyway, our final news item: nVidia's CEO Jensen Huang believes that GPU supply will remain constrained for most of 2022.
Yep.
So if you're not up to speed on this, basically the silicon shortage has really hit the graphics card market. It's been exacerbated by people buying graphics cards to mine Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies. And so it's very difficult to get hold of cards. So one of our designers, Pete, I think he's got a 3080. And I can't remember how long he waited. Was it 7 months or something crazy? He waited in a queue for 7 months before he got it. It's just absolutely bizarre. Anyway, unfortunately,
back was aching after that long. Oh, a virtual queue.
A virtual queue.
Right, okay.
So basically the situation is going to continue for at least another year yet. So that's pretty sad.
Well, and it's not just GPU supply, is it? It's every kind of chip. Vehicle manufacturers have had to reduce their output. They've had to simplify some of their vehicle designs to have less chips, because some vehicles have thousands in them and the foundries just can't keep up. And it's not a simple thing to just turn on a new foundry.
I mean, it's had the effect of actually raising the prices of used cars.
Yes, in this country, certainly.
Yeah, amazing. I think it is in America as well, based on some of the YouTube motoring channels I watch. Yeah. Anyway, we were talking about graphics cards, and that is a nice link then into one of our main topics.
You were actually going to do a segue into something.
You derailed it.
I ruined it for you. Sorry about that. So I spotted this advert for Intel Arc, and I hadn't heard about it before.
Yeah, and just to be clear, this is Arc with a C. Intel Arc with a K is its database of specifications, so that they use
ARC.
the Arc name twice, but ARC.
Yeah, which stands for we don't know.
No.
Probably nothing.
Well, no, they did describe it in their introduction video. Some nonsense. I mean, basically, they like the name Arc, and then they came up with a reason for it. That's what it sounded like.
Yeah. Anyway, I was quite excited about this. So, it's basically the new name for their consumer-focused GPU products, isn't it?
Yes. Now, specifically dedicated GPU products. So they already started this with, is it DG1? Yeah. And they're proposing to take that on further with DG2. So
catchy.
This is basically going to replace DG2.
Yeah.
And like all of the foundries who are producing silicon, they've got code names. So they've told us what the code name is. So Alchemist is the first one, and that's going to replace DG2. So that will release in early 2022. But then the next three after that will be Battle Mage, Celestial, and Druid.
Which, funnily enough, Druid. Battle Mage sounds quite exciting. Celestial sounds very futuristic and spacey. Druid makes me think of Stonehenge.
It does.
Which is kind of the opposite of what you want from a graphics card, isn't it?
Yes, and thin people with long beards wearing gowns
Sandals
with moons on them and stuff. It's all a bit. There's obviously some Dungeons and Dragons fans at Intel anyway, because I believe all of those are references to Dungeons and Dragons.
Right. Okay. I'm not. The only thing I know about Dungeons and Dragons is they basically have a dice with so many sides it could be better described as a ball.
Yes.
Yeah. Sorry if you're a D&D fan. I'm sure it's great fun. In fact, my son plays it sometimes. So there we go. No, sorry, that's Monopoly. I'm getting confused.
I don't think you need a 20-sided dice for Monopoly, although it would make it more interesting.
It would. So these are meant to be competing with things like the RTX 3070 for sort of raw compute power, aren't they?
Yeah, which is I was quite surprised to read that. I mean, that is, pitching your tent in quite a esteemed location, isn't it? I mean, the 3070 is that's a big feat. They're challenging themselves there.
I think that's a good thing. I think that's a good thing for consumers. I think it's a good thing for the market. I'm quite excited about the fact that at the moment nVidia and ATI are struggling.
ATI?
Not ATI.
AMD.
AMD. Oh, brain fart. Sorry. They're struggling at the moment with this aforementioned chip shortage, whereas obviously Intel have got their own foundries. So not only are they setting their stall right in the higher echelons of graphics, but can they fill the gap while nVidia and AMD are struggling?
No.
No, they can't. Shall we tell our dear listeners why?
Go on, Pete.
Well, rather than use their own foundries, because they want to use the 6 nanometer process, they're having to go to TSMC for all their Alchemist chips. So basically that means they're going to have to fight with AMD, Apple, and anyone else manufacturing anything kind of cutting edge at TSMC. So they're in the same flipping boat as everyone else.
They are, although I would say they probably will get a measure of priority, because if rumours are to be believed, Intel has spent a huge amount of money buying up TSMC's 3 nanometer process.
Have they?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because their own processes are not moving on at the correct pace. So
they're struggling, aren't they?
I believe that they are planning to do that. We shall see. The cards are going to have hardware-based ray tracing. I think ray tracing, if you're not a gamer, then you maybe not familiar with all of these things. And I know that some of our audience are gamers, but probably the majority aren't.
Yeah.
Ray tracing just means more realism. So better shadows, better light reflections, all of that kind of stuff. But it's incredibly compute intensive. Yeah. The current generation, the 30 series cards have gotten really good with ray tracing. It's fair to say that AMD, who have just introduced hardware ray tracing, are some way behind. And I would imagine that Intel will probably be in the same boat where they're some way behind nVidia.
Quite possibly, yeah.
But as far as I understand it, the majority of gamers are not actually that fussed about hardware-based ray tracing.
And I think the game actually has to support it to make best use of it, doesn't it? Yeah. So, and not many games do. So it may be that depending on your game selection and how much of a gaming connoisseur you are, you might not be too bothered about that.
No.
It's also got AI super sampling, similar to is it the DLSS that nVidia does?
Yeah. So I have to be honest. I had to research this because I've never used it. But DLSS stands for deep learning super sampling. So same principle. Basically, super sampling based on AI. What it means is that you can render the game at say 1080p, then you can use the artificial intelligence to upscale it to a larger screen. So it means that you're rendering at a lower resolution, which is much faster, so you get higher frame rates, but the quality still looks really good. And it does this based on, I assume that Intel in their data centers is rendering all of these games and then feeding that into their learning systems so that the AI can fill in the gaps on the games. Yeah. It does look really good. AMD have got a separate solution that is actually is not specific to their hardware, which is interesting as well. I haven't played with that either. What will Intel do with theirs? I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Yeah. But I think there's potential here because if you've got an Intel CPU and an Intel dedicated GPU, then you've got a more unified system in theory, and that's taking a leaf from Apple's book in a lot of ways. And I think that could be a good thing.
Yeah, and they are doing stuff with things like direct storage, which it's not the same as what Apple's done with unified memory, but what it means is that the dedicated GPU can access stuffs without interfering with the CPU.
Yeah,
and that just improves efficiency. So, yeah, I think Intel is working hard to to make those optimizations. And like you say, if they control both things, they'll be able to optimize it.
I actually think we'll look back in 10 years, and the period we're going through right now we'll consider to be a bit of a renaissance when it comes to system architecture, chip design, a lot more dedicated chips for specific things. Even ARM China are looking at a lot of dedicated chips to do specific jobs within the computer rather than relying on one big CPU.
Yeah, and I've got a video to shoot in a moment for the main channel. I'm going to be talking about...
What's the main channel?
youtube.com/constantgeekery.
Excellent.
And I'm going to be talking about, will Apple make a dedicated GPU? And the things that you've just been saying will lead into that a little bit. So I don't want to give the game away.
No, can I heckle from the sidelines when you record it?
You can.
Can I? Okay.
I'll edit it out. But
okay.
So Intel Arc, it's interesting, but there's not a lot of information yet. We'll need to wait and see what happens when the products actually get released, see what the benchmarks are like. And I think it's fantastic if they can join the party.
I think
the more the merrier.
I think, absolutely. Absolutely.
So let's move on to our other main topic. I do feel that this is something that needs to be talked about.
I'm pretty disgusted by this. This wasn't on my radar. And just like the ARM China thing, it's shocking.
So this is the SSD Bait and Switch. So what you're getting is SSD drives going to reviewers and being advertised with certain speeds, and then the drives that consumers are buying don't quite meet up with those specifications. And there are a number of reasons for this, but let's just run through. Let's start with Samsung, because they're the most recent that have been caught with this. They have a controller on their 970 plus drive, which is, that is the go-to NVMe drive as far as I'm concerned for a PCI 3 SSD. That's the one I would choose. Great reliability, great performance. And their controller chip is called Phoenix. But they're having the most recent drives don't have a Phoenix controller on them. They have a controller made by Elpis. And what they're finding, that's an unfortunate name.
I was going to say, is that Spanish for something?
Yes. Anyway, they have reduced performance. But the problem is that it's incredibly difficult for consumers to spot the difference because it's not listed on the packaging. It's, you need to look at actual product codes search the internet to find out what's going on and what drive am I actually getting. It seems to be like a bit of a lottery. And now Samsung have put this down to controller shortage. Again, it's part of the silicon shortage. They're just using whatever components they can get, and which that's fine, but you've got to be more upfront about
it. Fess up to it.
Yeah.
It would be like, this is like ordering a car and expecting something that we won't be able to have in cars for much longer, probably for a good reason. It's expecting a V8, and then when you lift the bonnet, you find it's actually a 4-cylinder 1-litre EcoBoost.
That would be disappointing.
It would be if that's not what you were expecting. I'm not saying that V8s are a good thing for the planet. They sound nice, though.
They do. So the controller for the SSD is quite an important component, and it's easy to see how an inferior controller would reduce performance, because that controller has to do all sorts of really clever stuff to make those drives work efficiently.
Well, we've seen how the M1 can slow down with certain drives where the driver support for the controller isn't optimal. So it's a key component, isn't it?
So the other people that have been doing it, Western Digital, now they have a drive called the SN550, and this is a popular drive because it's NVMe, but it's priced equivalent to SATA M2 drives. So M2 is the form factor. NVMe, that's the interface standard. NVMe is much faster than SATA. So you can buy these M2 SSDs. If it's got a SATA interface, it's going to be much slower. So this SN550 drive is not the fastest drive by any stretch of the imagination, but it is outperforming SATA drives for the same price.
Right.
But what's happened is from June 21, it's got different NAND flash being used on the drive. And
Okay.
we think probably quad level cells instead of triple level cells. And if you want to know more about how SSDs work,
You did a video on that, didn't you?
I did.
Maybe we could get Tom to sort of put it up there.
Yeah, above my head somewhere there'll probably be a link to that video if you'd like to know how SSDs work. The net result of this is that once the cache, the fast bit of the drive has filled up, it runs at half the speed or thereabouts as it did previously. So we're talking about 390 meg per second after the cache is filled. And the original drive, which was tested by Tom's Hardware, they were getting 610 megabytes per second. So it's not quite half, is it? But it's
a significant reduction.
Yeah, it's a third off, isn't it, of the performance. Now, what Western Digital have said when they've been challenged on this is, oh yes, well, when we change the spec in future, we'll give it a new model number. Like, yeah, it was obviously just a mistake. Yeah.
Whoops. Whoopsie.
Apparently, Crucial have also been swapping TLC for QLC on their P2 drives, but they say this is okay because when we published the original specifications, we published the specs for the QLC version.
Do you think that's okay?
No, I don't think it's okay because they then made a special version to send out to all the reviewers.
Of course they did.
And the thing is, what do people buy on? Yeah,
they buy on the reviews, not on the specs.
Quite often, that is the case. And apparently, A-Data and Kingston have been at it as well. So
naughty.
So what people are assuming, and whether this is right or wrong, it's probably not our place to say, but they're assuming that a bait and switch has happened, where these companies are sending out high-performing drives for review, and when all of the benchmarks are in and the reviews are in, they switch them out for cheaper components to increase profit.
I don't think it's quite as simple as that. I'm going to give these corporates the benefit of the doubt.
Very generous of you, Pete.
Well, yes, it is, but I think we are in quite unusual times at the moment where we do genuinely have a chip shortage, which is probably exasperating this, and that's why that's the main driver for it. However, they should come clean about that rather than it being exposed. I don't think it would have happened without the chip shortage.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, you may well be right.
But then I am quite a
you are one of those
guys.
Yeah,
I look for the good in people.
You're a constant geekery mug half full kind of guy, aren't you?
Yeah. Yeah, I am. Although
Whereas
at the moment it's nearly empty.
I'm simply more of the opinion that the mug is larger than it needs to be. So,
and that's what makes us so brilliant to listen to if you're just listening to us, or listen to and watch. And of course, the URL for that is
youtube.com/The Constant Geekery Podcast.
So come and join us.
Indeed. I don't think most people would notice. Let's be honest. I do quite a bit of SSD testing and other stuff on the channel, and you get these crazy speeds. But the simple truth is that most people will not notice those speeds because they throttle pretty quickly. Once you're under high load, the performance tanks. And are you really going to notice the difference in the real world? I'm not convinced. In fact, Linus Tech Tips did a great video on this back along where they had 3 gaming machines with various speeds of SSD in, and they got gamers to come in and do a blind test on all of these games and then say which machine they thought had the fastest SSD.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, and a few of them went for the one that had the slowest SSD. And this is simply because the fastest transfer speeds, you don't see those unless you're doing a massive file copy. And as the drive heats up, it will throttle back anyway. So most of the time, because you've got the initial overhead of any read or write operation, the actual time it takes for a small file is so minuscule in difference that most people will never notice. So don't be too concerned if you're buying an SSD with the speed rating. Read the reviews and see what people's real world experience is.
Awesome.
That doesn't excuse bait and switch if in fact that is what was being done.
No, because you're not getting what you think you paid for.
Mm.
And whether the outcome is the same, there is an argument for that, but it's misleading.
Mm. Well, all of which brings us to that part of the podcast where we like to look at rumours. And we've called this section the Rumour Mill. Pete will now do the jingle. Looking forward to it.
Oh, hang on. I haven't actually got my sound up.
You might want some volume.
Yeah.
This is smooth. This is an absolutely seamless transition. I imagine the viewers and listeners are really enjoying this.
The Rumour Mill.
Good. Thank you for that. That was indeed not worth waiting for.
It wasn't. Sorry for anyone that was hoping it might be.
All right, I'm going to start with a rumour.
Go on then.
Lots of sources for this one. iPhone 13 satellite messaging functionality.
Yeah, tell me more.
Okay, so the idea here is that if you're out of service range, you'll be able to still send messages via LEO satellites, low Earth orbit satellites. And I believe, although I may not be correct on this, I think iCave Dave, our pal, has done a video on this, and if you want to know more, you should check out his channel.
Top banana.
He is. And I got a feeling that it uses the same frequency as 5G, basically.
Okay.
So
sometimes, when you feel like you're getting that little buzzing sensation, it's probably there's a satellite just directly overhead.
Well, there's lots of them up there now.
Yeah.
I tell you, Elon Musk has been launching his constellation of satellites for providing internet access, and I actually saw them go overhead.
Yeah.
It's one of the freakiest things I've ever seen.
Why?
Because, when you see a satellite go across the sky, I mean, it's just a pinprick of light, but it's going across the sky. And so I was watching it go over, and it's like, oh, it's a satellite. But then there's another one right behind it, on exactly the same trajectory. I'm like, oh, there's another one, and then behind that, another one, and behind that, a whole stream of these
Cavalcade.
things went over at the top, all equally spaced, all on the same trajectory. It's just like,
wow. And
yeah.
how low are these? I mean, are they hitting seagulls on their way round?
I don't know how high seagulls fly, but I suspect not.
No. They can only go so high. They've got a ceiling before they asphyxiate.
Well, I think what I saw must have been just fairly soon after launch, because I believe what happens is they go up to a certain level and then they go further out.
Right.
But
okay.
Someone may correct me in the comments. Tom probably knows because he loves space stuff. But anyway, the idea behind this, you know how the GPS in your car doesn't work so well if you're in a big city because it loses the signal.
Yeah, because of line of sight and things like that.
Yeah, and that's because it's using medium Earth orbit satellites to do that. So low Earth orbit means that you've got a more chance of getting that signal indoors and in trees, that kind of thing. So this actually, if it's true, would be a killer feature, to say the least. If you're outdoorsy type of person and you're regularly in a place without signal, I mean, the UK is so small that doesn't happen very often, but I'm thinking people in America who go trekking, or Canada, off-grid, to be able to still send messages. If you had an emergency...
Yeah, it would be interesting to see if this is true. It would be great. I'm wondering what the cost would be to actually send a message via this, or whether it's part of the packages that the operators will give you.
Well, who knows? That is a big question. I hadn't thought about that. However, I don't think it matters what it costs. If you were stuck in a situation where you needed emergency assistance, you'd pay it, wouldn't you?
Definitely, definitely.
So, in our usual style, Pete, green, amber, or red on this one?
Well, on the basis that there's lots of sources for this.
Well, there's lots of people reporting on it, but there's only one source.
Okay. Well, in that case, I could see it coming because the technology's already there, but not for iPhone 13. So I'm going to make this a red.
Red. Okay. I'm going to go amber because I'm not sure.
You can't say lots of sauces if there's just one sauce and then people repeating it.
No, I know I shouldn't have put that in the notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure
that's like going to a restaurant and saying there's lots of sauces here and finding out you've got hundreds and hundreds of packets of ketchup but no mayo or mustard or tartar sauce or HP sauce or curry sauce. You've got lots of the same sauce, not many of the sauces.
This feels like a personal experience of pain that you've had.
Well, no, it's a play on the word sauce, isn't it?
Do you know what really grips me about condiments? Got to say that correctly. Condiments.
Tracklements.
Is there are some McDonald's restaurants in the UK where they will charge you for a pot of sauce.
What?
Yeah. So in the southwest, I can think of Dorchester and Minehead too. So I avoid them.
I can understand Dorchester doing that.
And I don't know why they do that, because no one else does it. But they charge you 5p. I mean, it's a pitiful amount. But the thing is, what happens is you place your order and then you say, as they're giving you the order, oh, can I have some curry sauce, or can I have some barbecue sauce? And then what normally happens is they give you a couple of the sauce pots.
Do they actually stop and say, that will be 5p, please?
Yeah, for each one. So then you're like, well, I haven't got change on me because it's not the 1990s and I've only got my card. And it's like, no, we're not taking a card payment for 10p.
Give me the sauce then.
How can you charge for condiments and call yourself a restaurant? It's a little pet hate of mine. It's profiteering and, yeah.
Give them a £50 note and say, I want it in coin, the change.
I don't see why they have to do it either. I used to be, many, many years ago, I used to be a mortgage broker.
There's a new section coming now. We're going to have to be The Secret Life of Dave.
Well, I've got a few others.
Yes, I know you have. I'm sure our listeners would enjoy some of your tales.
Okay, so I was a mortgage broker for a while, and when flexible mortgages first started becoming a thing, there was a guy that we did a mortgage for who had a McDonald's franchise. And what he would do is I don't even know how he was doing this, but he was saving the VAT money, so the value-added tax, which gets added to everything in the UK pretty much.
Like a sales tax in the US.
Yeah.
In fact, it's exactly the same.
Yeah. So businesses collect the sales tax, and then every 3 months they pay it to the government. So during that 3 months, he was putting it in his mortgage, in a bank account linked to his mortgage. And it was having the effect, of course, of reducing his mortgage balance whilst the money was in there, so he was paying less interest.
That's genius.
But his fixed payments obviously continued to go out at the same rate, so he was actually paying down capital on his mortgage at a very rapid rate.
That is genius, but it feels like it shouldn't be allowed somehow. I don't know why.
Well, he played within the rules and he won. The point of this story, though, is to say McDonald's franchises make an enormous amount of profit. They don't need to charge 5p for sauce pots. So there we go. That's got nothing to do with the rumour mill and nothing to do with satellite messaging.
No.
Other than if you were in a remote spot and a McDonald's restaurant was trying to charge you for sauce and you didn't have phone signal, you would be able to message others and let them know about it.
That's a real stretch, isn't it? That's a real stretch.
But it would be a great consumer
service. Just while we're on the subject of McDonald's and technology, because that is what this podcast is supposed to be about. Did you know there's a guy in the US, and I've got to take my hat off to this guy. He's written, I think it's a website or an app, that ties into McDonald's API and tells you which ice cream machines in the US are broken at a McDonald's.
Brilliant. All of them probably, based on my experience.
Well, in the US, some of the time. But yeah, so you can basically look up whether the McDonald's you're heading to will give you a McFlurry or a McNoe.
That's a really useful thing.
That's great, isn't it? What a brilliant use of technology.
Let me give you another top tip. And I do have plenty of top tips when it comes to McDonald's, because I do like a McDonald's. And I especially like the Big Mac. And what is it about the Big Mac that makes it a Big Mac?
The 2 burgers or the sauce?
It's the sauce.
Right.
That's what you buy it for. Because the burgers, if you eat one of those burgers on its own, you're not going to be sat thinking this is a delicious burger. Right?
I want you to know I know what this tip is. I could have made that a really long, drawn-out process for you by saying the bun, the special bun bit in the middle, the way they shred the lettuce, the 2 burgers, the sesame seeds. No, it is the sauce.
It's the sauce. And if you like the sauce, then why would you not want more of the sauce? So here's what you do. When you order your burger, you ask for extra Big Mac sauce, and they will indeed give it to you at no extra cost. And normally,
unless you're at Dorchester McDonald's in the UK, in which case it's 5p.
What it means is you'll get a freshly made one rather than the one that's been sat there, because they go cold so quick, don't they, the Big Mac?
I don't eat McDonald's, so I wouldn't know.
You're a liar.
There was a long period. Actually, no. Even when I am starting to get back to my healthy ways after the pandemic and other challenges. But yeah, wrap of the day used to be my go-to at McDonald's for a healthy, reasonably healthy option. But yeah,
Okay.
good tip. Good tip. Or if you want to buy a Big Mac, but you can't afford a Big Mac, ask for a double hamburger with Big Mac sauce.
Like where you're going with that?
£1.29 or something like that.
I used to employ a guy who was a vegetarian, and he would go into McDonald's and ask for a Womac.
A what now?
A without Mac. So basically, it's a Big Mac, but without the burgers.
So basically what you're saying is a lettuce sandwich with sauce.
And cheese. Yeah.
A cheese sandwich.
With
a
sauce.
cheese salad sandwich with Big Mac sauce.
That's, yeah.
You
What's
could
wrong with that?
you could have ruined that for him, couldn't you? You could have said, you do know what that sauce is made of. Just left it there.
He wouldn't have minded. He was a vegetarian because he didn't like the texture of meat,
Oh,
but he
fair
did
enough.
eat a lot of fish.
Do you remember,
So-
just while we're on the subject of McDonald's and just trying to pad out the runtime, do you...
Need to
No,
pad
we
out the
don't.
runtime.
Do you remember that person that made the ludicrous claim to you about McDonald's milkshakes?
Oh, do I tell that story?
Maybe for next week, if you're interested in what people claimed.
I'll
was
tell
in
you
the
what.
McDonald's
We'll do some more
milkshake.
McDonald's stories next week. I think we've done enough for this week, and I do have another McDonald's top tip as well.
Okay, we'll save that for next week. We'll probably forget, unless there's clamour in the comments for more McDonald's tips.
Everyone loves a McDonald's. No one will admit to liking McDonald's, but we all secretly do. So just saying that.
You know you're going to get something. No, McDonald's.
Yeah, but they won't be telling the truth. Will they?
You can't win. You can't win. Any more rumours from the mill?
Yeah, so the new Apple Watch 7, lots of sources. Again, I don't know if this is one source that's been repeated loads of times, so just I've seen it lots of times anyway, and lots of renders showing it with a flat edge design, which will give it a bigger display for the same watch footprint.
Do watches have feet print?
I don't know.
Print.
I'm just, I mean, I'm
Feet
looking
print.
at
Footprint.
footprint. So this is the Apple Watch Series 6, and this is not a svelte, nice watch. I wear it for its fitness tracking stuff, and I wear it on my right arm because I have a mechanical watch on my left wrist. I wouldn't really choose to wear this as a...
As a piece of haute couture. Is that the right?
Probably not.
No.
Horological...
As a piece. Well, let's face it. A nice watch is a form of jewellery for men.
Yes, this is not.
In a good way.
And this is not. One thing that... I mean, I didn't want the larger one. I wanted the smaller one. But they didn't do the solo band with the smaller one in the right size for my wrist. So I ended up with the slightly larger one. So I don't care about the size of the screen. I think it works fine. If you were to take this, though, it's got these nice rounded edges. I think they serve to conceal the true size of it because it is quite thick.
It's
isn't
quite. Yeah, it's quite chunky.
And if you were to then take that and make all of those edges squared off, it will look even bigger on the wrist, will it not?
It will, unless
Unless
they
they
make it thinner.
Yeah. Well, apparently possibly up to 1.7 millimeters thinner, which is a very specific number
Yeah.
to say possibly 1.7. But that's what I've seen.
I'm going to rate this as a green. I think this will happen. I think the Apple Watch hasn't really changed. I've got a Series 2 and actually the Series 1, the original Apple Watch. They all look the same. There's subtle differences, you can see, and you can see if you've got the poverty spec one with no red crown to say that you haven't gone for the enabled one, with the telephony, independent telephony. But I think it's probably time for a visual change. And I quite like the idea of a flat-edged one. I haven't seen the renders, but I quite like it. I'm going to look it up now.
I mean, why not just wait until we finish the podcast and then look it up?
Well, because I can do it while you carry on talking, can't I?
Well, not really, because the next rumour was you added this one to the list.
But I know what it is, so I don't need to look at it and speak at the same time.
So Pete's rumour, which he hasn't put a source on or anything.
Well, it's Macworld. There you go. There's my source.
Macworld. I feel like there's a Mac theme running through this in both of the food and tech variety. They reckon next event on the 14th of September.
Which is a Tuesday. 2 weeks today, actually.
Yeah, I can go with that. I think that's a green, unless they decide to do it next week. Or the week after the 14th.
Or any other time in the continuity of this space-time continuum. That's what it will be the 14th. I'm gonna nail my hat to the mast.
Okay. Good. Well, and what do we expect to see at that event?
iPhones and
Yes.
Apple Watches.
Yes.
And I'm quite excited because I'm due for a new iPhone, and I'm having to wait because my iPhone's got to that stage where it's saying, "You need a new iPhone." And I'm having to wait a couple more weeks and probably a couple more months until they're actually available.
Yeah. I got bored of waiting, and not that I was waiting for. I just wanted a larger one, so I've already changed mine.
You've got a filler shave, haven't you?
I got the filler shave model. Yeah.
Is it working out for you?
It's a perfectly adequate iPhone. I think the whole camera and Pro moniker and everything else is a total nonsense. It's no better than the one it replaced.
No, it's just, yeah.
So, and I suspect iPhone 13 will be much the same. It will be, some people will upgrade, of course. Will it be a real upgrade to the iPhone 12? Unlikely.
The rumours are there's not a lot to separate them. Better battery life, it's always a thing. They're going to look pretty much the same. Smaller notch, I think someone said. There was that rumour about the Touch ID under the screen, but I don't think that's going to be on this one.
No, I mean, if it
see.
gets that satellite messaging, that will be a cool feature, but it's not something that I would particularly need or ever use. So it doesn't really bother me. I think iPhones is kind of got to the point now where you don't feel like you want to go out and upgrade when the new one comes out. You don't look at it and go, "Oh, I must go and upgrade straight away,"
because it's got that thing that I haven't got.
It's just a case that, it's time to upgrade my phone. What's the latest one? And I'll wait an extra month if there's a new one coming out. It's that
that's where I'm at.
Yeah.
And I think someone in the comments last week or a few weeks ago made the same point. It's like, what is there? What is there to innovate on at the moment? There isn't.
No. Well, they could do a folding phone, I suppose.
Why? Why would you want that?
I don't know. Those new Samsung ones do look quite good. Unfortunately, they run Android, which is just I can't. I don't get on with Android, so I know lots of people love it, and that's absolutely fine, and I'm glad that it exists. But
I'm still going to do
me.
my Android challenge, by the way, when that Google thing comes out, the Pixel 6, is it?
Yeah. Well, they're apparently going to beat the iPhone to market, so we'll see what happens.
Are they? We'll see.
We are going to try and cover the event. We did ask last week whether you'd like to see a live stream after the event, so we will endeavour to do that. But it does depend on when the event is, because if it ends up being in the week of the 20th, I'm away, so we won't be doing it.
Well, I could cover it on my own.
Well, you're welcome to try that.
Yeah, live streaming on my own, because I won't, of course, have Tom with me either.
No.
So I would literally be doing everything.
You might be able to have an Erin, but that would probably be a disadvantage.
No, I actually want people to see the live stream if I'm going to do it. So I don't think she's here listening at the moment. Bless her. But, yeah.
Lots of people thought I was really mean to her in the video, and of course they just don't know. They think she looks all sweet and innocent, and they don't know the real.
She does look sweet and innocent.
She does
but
have that look about her.
Honestly, she is evil. She is.
She's a criminal mastermind, and.
Sometimes you watch a film where they genuinely get you with a twist at the end, where you find out the baddie is someone that you just didn't see coming. That's Erin. Until you get to know her, and then you know she's the baddie.
Yeah.
The film The Man from U.N.C.L.E. I don't know if you've seen the film The Man from U.N.C.L.E.
Possibly.
And there's a very, it's played by, I can't remember her name, but very beautiful actress who actually turns out to be the criminal mastermind. But for a long time, you just think she is a character in it. And she then turns out to be the criminal mastermind that gets blown up by a cruise missile. That's Erin.
So,
not that we're planning to blow her up with a cruise missile, because she does have her uses.
So, as a public service to our listeners and viewers, you now no longer need to watch The Man from U.N.C.L.E. if you haven't seen it already.
I've just ruined it.
Just wrecked it.
It's actually a really good film, stylistically speaking.
Okay, good. So, that's
So my Apple phone has just started ringing, despite being in airplane mode or aeroplane mode in the UK and on Do Not Disturb.
That's amazing. Obviously, user error there, I think.
Yeah.
We used to say pebcac in the IT support world.
Or picnic.
Picnic, go on.
Problem in chair, not in computer.
Pebcac is problem exists. No. I've even forgotten it. Problem exists between keyboard and chair.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, but you never make mistakes with turning off the notifications on your phone, do you?
Never. No. That never happens. Pete, we're absolutely waffling and we're an hour long. So that is the end of this particular podcast episode. I hope that you are still awake if you've managed to watch it all the way through. I hope you feel...
Unless you're listening to this to get to sleep, in which case...
We hope you're asleep.
Wake up!
I hope you feel your life is enriched. Don't forget that top tip at McDonald's. We know you all secretly like McDonald's, so don't try and deny it. And we'll look forward to your comments.
Cheerio.
Cheerio.